Hello, and welcome to Social Workers Rise, where we inspire social workers to connect, expand their knowledge, and change more lives than they ever thought possible. We will talk everything social work on every level from micro to macro. We are going to hear stories of social workers who are doing big things, learn new skills, and most importantly, give you actionable steps to make a difference today. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Social Workers Rise. It is your host, Catherine here. Today, we're going to be talking about a very common mental health disorder and how do you go about bringing up this conversation, assessing for it when working with clients. And this is depression. So a lot of people who seek out mental health support is for depression. And the statistics are about 3.8% of adults worldwide experience depression, which is about 280 million people around the world. Additionally, 10% of women who are pregnant or postpartum who have just given birth, 10% of them experience depression as well. So chances are you are going to experience clients who are going through depression. And it's important that you know how to bring this up, how to evaluate it, how to assess for it, at least to start the conversation so that even if you're not providing that direct therapeutic healing for them, you can start this conversation, normalize it, and reduce the stigma around seeking help and be able to point them in the right direction for resources for depression. So for this episode, we're going to mix it up just a little bit, and I'm going to play for you an excerpt from my course, The Clinical Essentials for the Future Therapist. In this course, it's designed to really guide you through the therapeutic process when you're new to working with clients. So if you are a new grad, if you are new to clinical setting, definitely check out this course because it's designed to really give you more confidence when working with clients, when showing up to the office, when doing the interventions. And with that confidence is going to come better improved outcomes and also better opportunities for your career as well when you're able to adequately communicate, hey, this is what I do, this is my style, this is why I do it. I've seen it to be effective with X, Y, and Z clients. Here's some examples, right? So that is my hope for you. Take a listen in. And if you're interested in this course, definitely click the link in the show notes for the Clinical Essentials for the Future Therapists. Enjoy. Let's talk about how we assess for depression. So when clients come into our office and come in to see you and they're worried, maybe they're depressed. How do we know? One of the major tools that you will use in your career as a social worker is called the PHQ-9. So this is a tool that's designed to assess the severity of depressive symptoms over the past 2 weeks. And it can help identify people who may be experiencing depression and need further evaluation for treatment, right? So essentially what this is, it is a questionnaire that consists of 9 questions based on the 9 criteria for depression. And we will get into those in just a little bit, but first, I think it's really important that you have some background information, right? So this is based off of the DSM criteria, so the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, right? Each item in the questionnaire corresponds to a specific symptom of depression. And we'll go through these and see that there's a correlation there. After the person has taken this assessment or that you've given it to them, you're going to be scoring their responses. And these scores can be anywhere from minimal depression symptoms all the way up to severe depression. And depending on your agency will depend on if you can do this, if the administration is comfortable with you using this tool. So I've been in places where, yes, social workers or really any employee entry level can use the PHQ-9. But I've been in other places where they say, nope, only the doctors can talk about, these symptoms of depression and use the PHQ-9. So it really just depends on your agency and where you're at. But for a lot of the healthcare agencies and professionals, you're going to use this, and it's going to be prominent in care clinics, mental health clinics, community organizations, and maybe even schools, depending on where you're at and what you do. Right? So it can be a good tool to use to track changes and be able to say, okay, when you came in for services or on this date, you scored here. But then now that we have been working together for X amount of time, we see that your score has gone down, or maybe it stayed the same, or maybe it's increased. Let's talk about it. So it can be used as a tool for interventions and for facilitating these conversations, and also as a way to encourage or prompt or have a discussion with the person around, do you need more intensive therapy? Do we need to connect you with medications? Like, what does that look like for you? How does that feel for you? And while you can't recommend any medications and you may not be in a place where you can officially diagnose quite yet, this can be a really good tool to say, what do you think about this? This is your score. Is this surprising for you? And it also gives you a tool to be able to use to follow up with people, and with people who have scored high, right? To say, hey, just checking on you. How are you doing? And also be able to refer them out to resources as needed. So let's, kind of check in and see what exactly is included on the PHQ-9, and, what are we talking about here? So it's a pretty simple form, and it's important that you are asking the questions the same for all of your clients that you give this to, right? And I know that's hard. It's easier said than done, but you really just try your best. And so it's asking for, over the past 2 weeks, have you been bothered by any of these symptoms? And the options that it gives them is not at all, for several days, more than half the days, or nearly every day over the past 2 weeks. Hey, it's Catherine here. I hope you are enjoying this episode. We're going to take a quick break to listen to these ads from our sponsors. The next time you need continuing education units, I highly recommend the Therapist Development Center. When I started this podcast, I reached out to the founder, Amanda Rowan, to see if she was interested in being a sponsor. And she jumped at the chance to support her fellow social worker. TDC has helped more than 100,000 social workers pass their licensing exam, including myself. I love that TDC CE courses are engaging and relevant. Amanda and her experts give us clear and practical clinical skills that we can immediately apply to our work. Some of my favorites are the Edge of Life Suicide Prevention course, where Amanda shares her personal experiences, and their They Did What? Law and Ethics course that looks at real cases where therapists face formal disciplinary actions. They also have a great telehealth course. We are legally required to take continuing education to increase our competence, and most other courses out there don't actually teach the material in a way that we can learn it, but TDC does. You can also check out the links in the show notes. So as we get into these questions, it'll say, over the last 2 weeks, how have you been how often have you been bothered by these things, right? So things like little interest or pleasure in doing things, feeling down, depressed, or hopeless, having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, or sleeping too much, feeling tired, having little energy, changes to your appetite, Do you have a poor appetite, or have you been overeating? Feeling bad about yourself, or that you're a failure, or that you've let yourself down, or you've let your family down. Maybe, the other question is trouble concentrating on things such as reading, watching TV, staying alert in class, right? Staying attentive at work. Because a lot of times when people are experiencing depression, these impact all areas of their life. And it makes it really, really hard for them to show up fully and be able to participate and engage in the activities of daily living, right? Another question is, have you been moving or speaking so slowly that other people could have noticed? Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you're feeling fidgety or restless and that you're moving around a lot more than normal. And it also asks, have you had thoughts that you would be better off dead? Or have you had thoughts of harming yourself in any way? And if they do acknowledge these, validate that this is hard and thank them, show gratitude for them being able to be honest with you. Because a lot of times when people come in, they don't want to feel like they're being a burden, right? So make sure that this is not just a checklist for you, but that you're actually going through like a real human being and acknowledging that this takes courage to enter into these conversations with a complete stranger, probably your complete stranger, and to be honest and to reassure them, you're not alone in this. There is help that's available, and you don't always have to feel like this, right? And I might not have the answers right now. I might not be able to cure your depression today, but let's talk about what that looks like. Let's talk about what treatment looked like. What does it look like to get better? And really having these conversations around what their expectations are, what the time frame is, how long has this been going on for them, and how might you or your agency be able to help? So once they fill that out, you're going to complete the scoring, and this is where we can have the conversation with them around what their score means. Thank you for listening to another episode of Social Workers Rise. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe and text this episode to a friend. If you want more, there are a few ways we can get to know each other and work together. First, definitely subscribe to the Friday resource email list. The link is in the show notes. And that's where you can learn more about the courses I offer, including Clinical Essentials for the Future Therapist and the Pulse Basics for Medical Social Workers. I'll also be sending out occasional tips and resources and other happenings within the social work industry. And for all your clinical supervision needs, be sure to visit risedirectory.com. This is a national directory of clinical supervisors for social workers, and we also provide free resources that you can use within your own clinical supervision. Lastly, if you have more individualized needs, I do offer coaching, individual consultations, and am available for public speaking engagements for social workers and change makers. Lastly, the boring legal stuff, but very important. The information in this podcast is not meant to be a supplement for therapy, professional advice, or clinical supervision. This content is provided as is solely for informational purposes. It is not legal, health, or safety advice. I am not advising you as a therapist. Organizations should engage their own experts to ensure any adopted measures are compliant with applicable laws and standards in their jurisdictions. The opinions expressed by individuals or organizations are their own and do not reflect the views or opinions of Social Workers Rise or Catherine Moore. References to specific products or organizations do not constitute any endorsement or recommendations by Social Workers Rise.